Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie, and welcome back to the Mancave of Madness. So today I'm standing in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre room, the TCM room if you will, and you might remember that I made quite a change to this room and essentially put up this really cool wall with a bunch of these antlers and moose horns and stuff like that, and I built this sort of wooden pillar with the meat hooks and stuff which I all made and designed from scratch. And I really love the stuff that I was able to incorporate into this room, but something doesn't quite feel right with this, and just gonna show you a bit more of the room in its entirety. And basically this side of the room, which has the bookshelves in it, I'm just feeling like this doesn't really go together with the overall feel that I was going for in the beginning, because I really wanted to make this room feel like a room which could be part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe, if you will. So I'm really happy with this whole wall. I like the fact that I was able to include so much little knickknacks and stuff that feels very sort of gruesome and macabre. You know, I got some of these old vintage hammers, and I got some replica photos from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. And I just think that, you know, there's a lot of stuff I like in this room, and I love having to work with this, sort of placing everything where it's supposed to be. And it's just a really, really nice concept, but I feel that the sort of execution of this isn't 100% yet. You know, I like symmetry. That's basically why I placed the TV in this specific position, because I like having like the horns in the middle. However, I also feel that there should be more chaos in this. I mean, if Leatherface was designing a room, he wouldn't consider symmetry. He wouldn't consider having the TV, you know, exactly centered. So today I'm going to remove quite a bit of stuff from here and try to get more of a vintage feel. I want to replace some of the furniture. I want to go for something much less clean than these classic Billy bookcases. I want to go for something more vintage, a bit more rundown, and try to get something that feels much more authentic. And another thing I can mention is that I actually found a bookcase, or a small bookshelf, which I have in my other man cave room. So just get some lighting here. So now we are in the office part of the man cave, and here I did actually dig out this old bookcase, which is a vintage one, which you can see here, and it's quite a low shelf, so sort of similar to the old style lower Billies, but it's a bit more wide. And this is a very sort of typical wooden color. It's not as dark as the Billy bookcase I have in this room, but I placed this here on test and I really like the position, but I'm also feeling like this might actually fit better in the other room. So I'm going to incorporate this and see if I can do something fun with it. But I thought I would actually show you that I placed this in here so you can see it, because this is actually part of the man cave, which I haven't really had the time to document yet. And yeah, I am actually quite happy with how this looks, but I really do want to experiment with moving this into the other room. So we are going to do that in today's video. So without further ado, just kick it off and try to fuck this place up.
We've met before, haven't we?
Yeah, I don't think so. Where was it you think we met?
It's your house, don't you remember?
No, I don't. Are you sure?
Of course. As a matter of fact, I'm there right now.
What do you mean you're where right now?
At your house. Call me. Dial your number. Go ahead. I told you I was here.
How'd you do that?
Ask me.
How'd you get inside my house?
You invited me. It is not my custom to go where I'm not wanted.
Who are you?
Alright, so let's do a bit of a halftime talk. I have essentially ended up in a place which I didn't really expect, which isn't too uncommon in my videos, if we're gonna be honest. But I've actually been building on this shelf, which I built from scratch, and I decided to basically expand on the idea of this sort of slaughterhouse wooden framework that I built in one of my previous videos, and I just went ahead and took some more of these, you know, really solid, thick wooden pillars that I found in the loft or the garage or the barn, wherever I found them on the property, stuff that we had. So I took some new boards, and let me just flip the camera so we can see what the hell I'm talking about, or I can see it. So here we have the shelf. I went with a bit of a different style, but it's still the same sort of color of the wood or the grain of the wood. So I originally used these, and these I believe are 10 by 10 centimeters, and I was really happy about those. But for this next portion, when I'm actually doing the shelves, I needed some wider pieces, more like planks or boards, and I found these which were pretty similar in terms of the, you know, color or the grain or whatever to these ones that I had before, so I think they match quite well. And then these are essentially 20 centimeters by 5 in thickness, which is really, really thick, but I also think that it looks really, really good just in terms of creating this very sort of old and just extremely solid looking shelf. Now, as for the mounting of this, I have used some of these typical metal brackets what you can find at the hardware store. Didn't use all the set of bolts or screws that you can use because I felt I didn't really need it. And this is basically just mounted to the side pillars in the same way. So yeah, this is a really solid shelf. The only thing that worries me is that the shelf might tip over, but I do have these brackets up here that are mounting it to the wall. And as for the bottom one, you can tell that this is actually not as deep as the other ones. There's actually quite a bit of space here towards the wall, but this was because I couldn't find any more of these boards. So I figured I'm going to just cover these up with tapes anyway. Basically going to place DVD editions for Texas Chainsaw and, well, basically any kind of format, just DVDs, VHS, whatever have, and just stack those on these 3 rows, and then we'll just see how much I can actually fit into this shelf. Because, I mean, I have so much stuff. This is actually 2 of these bookshelves which are filled with various editions. So I'm not really sure if I will be able to fit everything in on these 3 shelves. I really doubt I will, but we are going to try it out just to see. So I'm basically thinking that I will start over here with my American releases, and then I'll just go all the way, and then I'll just continue with the whatever I have on B, Belgium, I don't know. So yeah, let's go ahead and fill this up, and then we're gonna see what it looks like. And then I guess we'll just have to continue with the rest of the room. So yeah.
I'm gonna show you what it takes to survive and to protect this family from the outside world. You must never show fear. You will show them no mercy. Some will run. Some will fight back. But you must never back down.
So I've been working on this room for quite a while now. I think this is a project which I started many months ago, and it's just been a really long process trying to weed everything out, trying to figure out like what works in this room and what doesn't work in this room. And it's a project which has been going on for such a long time because it's sort of hard to decide when you're going to stop with this. You know, you work on a shelf or something, sort of sell down on that, and then after a while you sort of realize that, oh, maybe I should do this, and then the project just keeps on building. But now I'm feeling that I'm actually at a point where I'm really happy with the overall feel of this room. So let's go ahead and check it out. And I'm gonna go ahead and flip the camera as we start on the outside of this room. So I just want to show you the entrance briefly because I've actually added a piece of authentic Swedish police tape. This is one of those typical do not cross tapes. You can see that it actually says police do not cross, but the rest is obviously in Swedish. Now, the reason for writing a Swedish tape is obviously because, you know, I am in Sweden and I essentially just found this outside at an abandoned crime scene. I have no idea what it was. It was just a, you know, piece of tape that was sort of tied to a piece of tree branch or something. So I mean, it wasn't anything sort of super exciting, but I just thought, huh, this is a small piece of police, I might actually grab that. So I decided to tape this off here to sort of make this feel like a potential crime scene. That's sort of what I'm going for. And then if we proceed into the room, you can see that we still have the big wooden framework, and then obviously, as I showed you in the time lapse, we have the extended 3-part shelf here, which I built in this particular video. So I'm just super happy with this. You can see that I have all of these tapes, which is the bulk or the base of my collection. This is essentially all of my Texas Chainsaw Massacre editions from ABC, you know, American, Belgium, whatever, all the way up to my, see what it is, my Norwegian editions down there. So this is A through N. Then I have some other editions and some other shelves which we're gonna get into. So just doing a slow pan of the room to begin with, which is quite hard to do, seeing as, you know, this lens doesn't really take in the entire thing, but you can just go ahead and move in here. And I'm gonna stand over in this corner to give you a bit of a better view of the rest of the room. So, as you can tell, I've actually added a second shelf, much in the same style as the one on this side of the room. So, this is a 3-layer shelf, as you can see. I used the same type of wood on this one. And then above it, I actually have a wall shelf where I placed a bunch of these old, sort of really creepy dolls and stuff like that, which I've found at various cardboard sales throughout the year. And yeah, I'm just really excited about the overall feel of this room. Some of these toys might be a bit too modern, but overall, I feel that it just makes for a really cool concept. And as a whole, I'm just super excited about this. And then over here, we have the new television furniture, which I picked up from the other room, which I actually found at this property. Like this was something that was left behind by the previous owners. And then I have the big ass television, which is essentially a bit too big for this room, to be honest, but it is a TV that I got for free. It was also left in this house when we got it. So I'm just gonna keep this for now until I happen to stumble on a smaller one, which might be a bit better size, but for now it just sits there. So I suppose we should actually just go ahead and do like a full run through everything in here. I'm sure people would enjoy that, so I figured that's where this video is heading. Just some more info before we check out the releases. As for this wall, I didn't make too many changes aside from adding the 3 new shelves to this, which just worked out really well. I did actually change the one of the main pieces here, which is this set of antlers which you see in the middle. And I actually used to have a really massive set of moose horns here, which I'm sure you remember. They had these absolutely beautiful large sort of antlers, and I decided to take these down, and the only real reason for why I did that was that even though I love them, they were just too big for this room. I mean, I don't know how many times I sort of walked into them and essentially almost had like my eyeballs, you know, poked out because these were just protruding too much. And then I realized that I had this second set of antlers, which were also, you know, part of the property when we got them. So I decided to expand on that with this human skull replica, as well as some of these lower jaw replicas, which came with the same type of skull. You're going to see a couple of more of those throughout the room. And then I just sort of added this by pieces of string, like old pieces of string, which I use down here as well to give this sort of a vintage feel and that typical sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre DIY feel to it. And I really do think that this became a cool centerpiece which works, and it's just so much better in terms of how big it is, and it really does make a lot more sense as to how long it's sort of, you know, extending into the room. Now it's sort of extending the same portion as the shelf, but back with the old set of antlers, the moose head, I mean, I'm not kidding. This was extending like almost to here, I would think. So no matter what furniture I had here, like, you know, when I had the TV and I'm trying to, you know, sort of load a cassette into the machine or something, and I raised my head, I kept sort of hitting this. And it just became like whenever someone was in this room and sort of looking around, I sort of had to guide them like, be careful, don't like sort of puncture your lung by accident because you're walking into this thing. So this thing works a hell of a lot better. And this is also more lightweight, which meant that I could essentially just mount it through the wall with a couple of these screws. I didn't really need the extra sort of metal piece which I had before. And so obviously I'm leaving a bunch of holes in the wall, but I don't really care, it doesn't really matter. And it just looks really well. I'm really happy with this. So without further ado, I'm not really sure if we should check the sort of entirety of the room before we head on over to looking at the releases. I'm not going to get into super detail about the releases. I just want to give you a bit of a walkthrough of what I have. But before we do that, let's just go ahead and look a little bit at the overall aesthetics and some of the details that aren't really additions, so to speak. So as for this window, I did have this before, but I did decide to add one more detail here, which is that I used a bunch of these pages which I cut out of a old Fangoria magazine, which one of my friends gave to me. So I had this laying around, and I decided to actually tape off the windows. And this doesn't look too notable now. I just added a bunch of these cutouts with pictures of various sort of special effects movies, which I figured would be stuff that you could find in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre household, because that's sort of like the kind of stuff that would fascinate them. I think it's like these gory scenes, even if they're fake, it sort of gives this general unsettling feeling of this room. And then on this side, I went with the same kind of cutouts. You can hardly see them, but there's also a centerfold shot there, which was also in the Fangoria magazine actually. So I just decided to use these because this magazine was in quite bad shape. You know, the page was sort of falling out of it, and I figured this is actually a really cool thing to do, because it also feels like whenever you see horror movies like Texas Chainsaw or stuff like that, doesn't like all the time, like these outback homes where there are like savage killers living, you know, they always have their windows taped over. I don't know, it just felt like this sort of generic thing which happens. And this also looks really cool when it's daylight out, because then you get like this nice little double exposure type thing going on, where you see the prints on both sides being blended together, which looks really sort of cool and distorted, which I think is really nice. Then as for this shelf here, this is essentially mostly the same stuff I had before. I had my little sort of alien fetus there in a jar, not really Texas Chainsaw, but then again, it's the kind of stuff you see in weirdo outback homes, or that's my general idea behind that. Here's an old glass bottle that looks like a lady. I found this at a car boot sale a while back, so I'm pretty sure I documented this in one of the secondhand sickness videos. There is a picture here, framed picture of one of the promotional postcards from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. There's a small little screaming lady there in the frame, which I also find. And I'm not going to talk too much in detail about everything. Here's one of these sort of bottle openers, which is actually a bit uncensored. It has this sort of nudie model on it, and it's quite old and dried up, so it doesn't really work. But it's like one of those sort of pen gags where you turn it around and it's sort of, she becomes dressed around dress, or you know what I'm talking about. Then we have this saw, which isn't really anything sort of authentic or screaming accurate to the movie. It's just a saw I had, which looked pretty old, which was on the property when we got it. Then we got the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what is it, Masters of Horror diorama? I don't know, you probably know what this is, but I forget the exact name now. Then we got, you know, another one of these Living Dead doll figures over here. And there's just a bunch of stuff like that around the room, but we're going to get back to that when you look at the actual shelf. Down here is just a bit of knickknacks, and sorry if my voice is a bit so and so today. I'm actually having a bit of a cold, a bit of a sore throat. so I'm not really used to talking, so pardon me if I do a bit of coughing or stuff like that. So anyway, here are some boxes where I essentially just keep some extra wires for like VCRs and stuff like that, so it's not too interesting, but I do like the idea and look of these old vintage wooden boxes. Here is a battle axe, which I recently found at a car boot sale. Doesn't really have anything to do with Texas Chainsaw, but it felt like one of these medieval type weapons which weirdo, bizarro, psycho, outback kind of people might have in their home. I don't know. It just was the only place in the house where I felt like a ancient weapon would make sense. Down here we have one of these Texas Chainsaw Leatherface figures, actually quite a big one. I forget now what company put this out. I bought this quite a while back, haven't really had a good place to display it, but I'm not sure about this, but I placed him here under this table, and there's actually a little neat trick here. I actually added a small light, which you might not pick up, but there is actually a light here, which can tilt a bit. And the only reason why I added this, because I thought it gave such an interesting lighting effect, and you don't really notice it. It almost looks like a ceiling light if you compare it to his scale. So I thought that looked kind of cool, just having it there and sort of lighting him from above. And I also have some lights up here, so it might sort of not even be noticeable, but if I turn off that light, you'll see, you know, where it's coming from in a bit nicer way. So I don't know, I just thought that gave a nice little, I don't know, it sort of enhances the fact that he's standing there. And also, as far as this table goes, this was also something that was mentioned in one of my car boot sale videos, I think. I essentially found this at a yard sale a while back, and I just felt like it sort of fitted this room. It looks a bit vintage, and I don't know, the whole idea behind this room was to make it more vintage, make it feel more rundown and more sort of hillbilly countryside. And I think this sort of works really well in that environment, and that's also part of why I added things like this little lamp here, which is very industrial. I think this is quite a modern design, but I always like this sort of home-built type quality of this lamp. It's got a bunch of metal and weirdo pieces to it, even though it is like a LED lamp, so it's quite modern. But I tried to go with things like that and sort of add things which felt like they could belong in this household. But I don't know, you tell me what you think, if I made a good overall sort of experience, but I'm quite happy with it. Here is also a cross with Jesus on it. This is a metal cross, which I found at a car boot sale. It's a general thing which I collect every now and then. I'm sort of interested in historical artifacts and Christian artifacts. I mean, I'm a Satanist myself, but I do like the aesthetics of some of this stuff. And I do also feel that this is the kind of stuff that you might find in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre household. Not sure if the Sawyer family would be considered Christian or not, I have no idea. But a lot of the time with horror movies in the Outback, there tends to be like a religious aspect or sort of worship type thing going on with cults and whatever. I just felt that it fitted the theme in some aspect. Here's a small lighter. I forget where this is from. Then we have a really solid all-metal sledgehammer, also a car boot sale find. Here is a promotional little salt can from the remake movies. This was a promo item for that. Moving over to the rest of the room, I'm gonna try to speed this up because I realize this is gonna be a hell of a long video. I put up some photos. Here's actually one which is from Jacob's Ladder. I've had this for the longest of time. I think it was actually originally cut from a movie poster. Quite an odd motif, but it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie actually. And I just felt that once again, this looks like the kind of stuff you might find framed in one of these Outback kind of homes of horror. It doesn't make sense in this universe, but I just went by the feel, and I really think it works in this atmosphere. Over here we have Living Dead doll box, same one as the doll which is over there. Here is another one of these big boxes, which I believe is from, yeah, I forget what it is. It's Fright Rags. This is like a t-shirt box. Over here we have some of these leftover tapes which aren't really part of my regular Texas Chainsaw collection. Basically everything you see around the room is for the original film from 1974, but these tapes, this little shelf here, is for some other stuff, so we might as well take a look at that right now. Here we have some of the sequels on video, DVD, what have you. There's a movie Maniacs display piece there. And this is also a really cool thing which I did with this whole rehaul of the room, I decided to make these tiny little sort of shelf dividers, or I guess you could call them like category dividers. So here you can see I actually have sequels written. I decided to go with a font which is quite similar to the original font seen in the opening of the film, even though there it's yellow. And you can see that those also pretty common. This has been used on this cover as well. And generally what I did, I actually printed this out, thought I would show you. So over here is just some examples I went through. So this is just, you know, black on white. I printed out all of the countries, and then I actually moved those over and printed them on this sort of pre-stained paper. This is like a paper which is a bit sort of yellowed and has a bit sort of, not really texture, but it has a little bit of like an old papery type feel. It's actually printed this way. And then I went with this little blood spatter image which I added. Now it's in black and white here, but you know, based on this one, you can see that it's actually red when I printed it. So this was just a test print which happened to be in black and white. But here you can see the idea of what I did. Printed all of the countries, then added this general blood spatter as a big image over that, and then I basically just cut out these little spines here so I could add them all around the room. And this is something I've actually done for all of the releases I have. So I mean, over here on this one, you can see that we actually have America with the same style, moving over to Argentina, Australia, and yeah, so we're gonna get back to that, but just to give you an idea of what I'm doing throughout the room with that. Okay, so I do realize that we are doing this a bit out of sequence now, but it just happened that's the way it's gonna be, because this room is such a chaotic place anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But like I said, here we have the sequels, then below that we have all of the porn spoofs, which actually have their own section. Yeah, it's pretty weird that I have too many releases of that. But then we go down to miscellaneous, which essentially, you know, I got the computer game, the new one that came out, and we have like an Atari cartridge, soundtrack bootleg, just general stuff which sort of ended up here. I also have a copy of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, which I don't know what you call that. I don't know if it's even worthy of calling a spin-off, but obviously the title is inspired by the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We got some tarot deck down there. We also have this Tubbs figure, which I got recently, which I really love, but haven't really shown that off, but that's down there. And then we might actually move over to talking about this shelf, I suppose. And I don't know, things are really, it feels like I'm doing everything backwards here, so I'm not really sure how we're gonna go about this. But I wanted to focus a bit on these furnitures which don't really just have the movies in them. I thought we would start there. So this became a really big display shelf, which was fun because it's one of those things which didn't really exist in the room before that. I mean, obviously this is a bit of a display in terms of the wall, but here I just have all the movies stacked beside each other, so there's no covers or anything here. So I really wanted to have one place where I could actually display the covers of some of these big boxes like the laser discs, vinyl records, what have you. And I really think this works well. So if we're just going to take a brief look at this, you can see that we have the big Texas Chainsaw Massacre Blu-ray, I think it's Blu-ray or DVD, boxer from Germany. Then we have a Texas Chainsaw Massacre Laserdisc boxer from Japan. We got a Japanese VHD, which is a really old format. Then we have a vinyl soundtrack for the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. And then another German Blu-ray box set from Turbine, the same kind of style as that one over there. So then I also did something which I think is really fun, is that I tried to add a bunch of these old rusted vintage sort of tools, or, you know, makeshift weapons. Like over here I would have just general stuff which I found around the house in like the garage. This is just like one of these metal cutting sort of clippers or scissors. So I just tried to go with like whatever I had that was rusty, like the most ancient and rusted and worn out thing I could find. Here's one of those sort of meat hook type things, typical weapon you will probably see in horror movies, which isn't really slaughterhouse specific. It could be used for, you know, moving bales of hay or whatever, but it really belongs on a farm, and I really do like the look of that, so decided to keep that here as such. Then we have here's just a really old rusted sort of knife, which, you know, no one would ever use this. Like, you know, it's still actually quite sharp. I can actually cut with it and make marks, but I'm not sure what it was originally used for, but looks ancient as hell, so let's just keep it there for display. And then moving upwards, or well, we can actually take a look at this shelf before, just the last display shelf. So here we have a Black Maria Trucking Company boxes, which I also believe was from Fright Rags. It's an earlier release they put out. We got a Texas Chainsaw Massacre book, which is from Brazil. Got a promo bag, like evidence bag from the remake movies. And another book set, also from Brazil. I got a custom-made release here, which is from my friend. His name is Tyler Parentu, and it's just an awesome guy. Makes such ridiculously cool custom jobs for himself. And then we have a Texas Chainsaw Massacre book, which actually signed. It wasn't actually signed to me. I actually found this signed to a guy who happened to have the same name as me, so that was interesting. This was actually after the passing of Gunnar Hansen, so I was sort of sad and happy at the same time to actually find this, because it's, you know, really odd that I couldn't find a copy signed to someone with my name. Doesn't really matter, I just found it curious and I wanted the book. So in any case, let's just go ahead and move on, and we can actually look at the stuff up here, which is quite new to this room. This is a very sort of different display to what I've done in the past. And obviously here I have a bunch more of these sort of ancient old tools. I do have a Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake wallet here. It's just hanging on a chain. Then we got what I believe is like the scissors that you would use for essentially maybe cutting sheep's wool or cutting fabrics, I don't know. But I figure like, yeah, this Leatherface would use this. It's a bit too modern, I suppose. But at the same time, you know, it was a pretty cheap sort of pickup, so I decided to get it. I think I found it at a second-hand shop or something. And now I forgot that I actually probably might need two hands to put this back. Let's see if it works. There we go. Okay. Then we got a mask, one of these typical sort of Venetian type masks, which I know isn't Texas Chainsaw related. But like I said, I'm going with an overall feel of horror and sort of serial killer outback type stuff. So that's like the creepiest kind of mask I had. I don't really have a Texas Chainsaw Massacre mask, to be honest. But I still like the look of this. I might replace it with something else or get some more masks in here. Here is a vintage sort of, not really bear trap, but like the smaller size for like foxes and whatnot. Also really rusted, another cardboard sale find. Here's a really old hatchet, which I think I found in our previous house. And I actually brought it with me when we moved because I thought it looked so cool. Here's an old pair of scissors, sort of like the ones over there, or like just, you know, which another cardboard sale find, really old, rusted, love it. And then we also have one of these choking type collars, which used to be used on dogs until they were outlawed, I think. And this was also a recent find at a cardboard sale. So a lot of these things have been mentioned in the past. It seems like every time I made a video like the Secondhand Sickness series, I tend to say like, oh, and I bought this thing because, you know, I'm doing the Texas Chainsaw Room. So now you're actually seeing all of these items in their right environment, which is what I planned for. So that's really nice, I think. And then before we move up, we can just take a brief look at this display in front of the television, which was something I did do before when the TV was sitting over there, but here it's sort of like a bit of the same thing. So we got some of these promotional postcards and stuff, and then I got some old hammers, which I found at the garage. Here we have a German or Austrian Texas Chainsaw Massacre DVD edition, and another German or Austrian, I forget which one. This Blood Pack release, which is quite uncommon. And then there are some promotional stuff. We have a vintage Texas Chainsaw Massacre pin, which was from the UK, like the original theatrical release. I think these were sent out or shared at the premiere. I forget now, but it's a really old promo item. Here is one of these little things which came with one of the Brazilian releases, as far as I recall. And then some more photos. This is actually a vintage photo of me as a kid, but I thought just like it fitted the theme and the style of this. Then we just have some additional promo photos from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, and another one of these big sledgehammers. So then I've got, you know, like my DVD and VCRs down here, and then we get to like all of these stacked editions. So we're gonna get back to those once we're done with everything else. Moving upwards, we have some vintage framed stuff. Not really sure how to go about this. First one is actually a picture. It's actually my mom and dad's wedding picture, which is a bit odd, but I found this in a box. I really like the look of it, and you know, my dad didn't want it, obviously, seeing as he's in a new relationship, and my mom, she kept this throughout all these years in a box. I was recently clearing out her stuff because she has Alzheimer's. She's in a home now. Quite sad, but I just really thought that this is such a nice picture, and it would be shame to throw it out, so I actually put it on the wall and actually blacked out their eyes. So don't read too much into this. This has nothing to do with me not liking my parents or whatever. I actually have a great connection with both of my parents, aside from the fact that my mom has Alzheimer's now. I can't remember my name. But yeah, let's just move on. Don't make too much of it. I just thought it looked cool. Then we have a vintage framed poster for like a lumberyard type thing, which, you know, trying to market stuff with putting a naked lady. I don't know. I think I featured this in one of my older videos. Then we have another set of antlers, a small one, and then we can move over to this long shelf, which has all of my collection of creepy puppets on it, which was also like something which I really started collecting in preparation of remaking this room, because I felt like this is the kind of stuff I want to keep in this room. So I thought we would just do a slow pan here. I'm not going to talk about every individual item, but then you can see some of the dolls I have here. Most of this is essentially car boot sale finds or stuff that I found at secondhand shops, thrifting, what have you. And here's a new item which I haven't really talked about. This is a set of these skull replicas which I got on Amazon. I quite like the quality on these. They have like the removable jaw, and this is essentially the same skull as the one which is over here on display. But for some reason when I bought them, some of them were painted, some of them were not, but it's exactly the same mold. So yeah, I'm quite happy that they sent me different sort of paint jobs, because it did give a bit of a variety. I didn't change these in any ways. I picked this one over here, which was just white and less painted, because it sort of went better with this actual authentic bone piece. So these are obviously replicas. You know, human skulls are not allowed to have authentic in Sweden, I think, or anywhere, I don't know. But yeah, so this is a replica, but I thought these went well in terms of the shading and the color. So that's why I went with this here and this skull over here, but it's actually from the same seller on Amazon. So quite happy with the quality, except that they were shipped really poorly. So yeah. Then we got some more dolls, really creepy old ones. So this is the only one I think that looks a bit too new, but it's actually got a really creepy clown laugh, which I don't think no, I don't actually keep batteries in these because I don't want them to sort of get you know, rusted and stuff. But yeah, it does have really creepy laugh, and I think it looks like a really creepy clown doll. So moving on, some other stuff here. Here is one of these vintage ashtrays, also something I found at a car boot sale. So I think I showed this. It has the removable top portions. You can place cigarettes in there. Really creepy little display piece, which one of my friends made me. This black painted devil or demon doll, which I love. Some more old vintage dolls, various aspects. Here's an authentic, I think it's a wild boar cranium, which I got for free from one of my neighbors. They were clearing out stuff, and I sort of noticed this and asked if I could have it. It's not in the best of shape, you know, some of the teeth are a bit loose, as you can see, but generally I just really like it. Sort of does fit the theme, and I like mixing this stuff, like having the replicas and the real thing, because I think it blends well, and it sort of makes it more difficult to tell what's real and what's not. Another clown doll, they're quite similar, but they are actually different. And then some more vintage toys over here of various sources, I guess we could say. So that's essentially it for the display pieces. I guess we can talk a little bit about the wall as it is. I mean, you have seen most of this already, but just a brief rundown. We do have a replica rifle here on the side, which is a new piece, which is something that I actually got for free, I think. This was given to me by one of my friends. She was clearing out some stuff from her dad, I think, and she didn't know what to do with this, and she sort of got the idea that I'm into weapon replicas, which I guess I am to some extent. It sort of happened to fall into my lap. So decided to place this here because it feels like something that belongs in a, you know, outback kind of home. Feels like they would have really ancient weapons for some reason. Then we can look at the wall. We do have a machete up here, which I also showed in one of the previous videos, I think. And then, yeah, we do have some antlers. These are all authentic. I have these small sort of framed pictures from the movie. This is obviously Leatherface with the woman mask. Actually a behind the scenes shot, I think. Chop top over here. And then we have the main centerpiece, obviously, which I really dig. This is a authentic set of antlers. Then we have the replica jaws, which come from some of these skull replicas, which I got on Amazon. Then we have a picture of Leatherface up there. A couple of these. Not really sure if they are meat hooks, but meat hook-ish type pieces. Then moving over here, we have another framed picture. This is actually of Tobe Hooper sitting on set. So I decided to take these behind the scenes shots because I felt that they would be more fitting and more authentic looking as old framed pictures. This is just pictures I found online, printed them out and framed them in these little frames, which I actually also got from my mom when we were cleaning out her stuff. Then we got some more antlers, couple, so I did go for a lot of symmetry here, as you can see. I'm not sure if I gave you a wide enough shot to show that, but you can see it now. And then, of course, we got the meat hooks, which I've talked about in previous videos, which I made myself. These were originally straight metal rods, which I, with the force of my hands and some tools, I bent these into shape. I used a sort of grinder type thing to grind off the metal and make them look as they do and make them sharp. I love the way these came out. I'm really happy with actually crafting those myself. And then over here we have the wooden frame, obviously, and we have a old Husqvarna blade or sword for the chainsaw, which is really rusted, to set it to hang that there. And then we have one of these new things, which is so hard to show, but this is essentially a old vintage rusted light, which might be more visible if I actually turn it off. So I did actually plug this in down here. So here we can just take a brief look at how this looks without the lights. You can tell it is quite rusted. And it's one of these handheld lights, which I just connected via the regular wire down there. So it goes on the regular household power. Okay, so quite long video. I guess we're talking about a whole lot of stuff, but I really do want to show you. I'm trying to remember if there's anything I did sort of leave out that I should talk about before we move on. Oh yeah, this is actually a leather style apron, which I picked up a while back, which I thought really fitted the theme of this room. And I know it's not a really big display, but I felt that I wanted to have it at some point just hanging out there. So yeah, I think it works, and it's definitely a really nice apron. I do really like it, and it looks great. It's actually really detailed. I think it was a Facebook marketplace find. But with that said, I think we can actually move over to looking at all of my releases. And yeah, gonna try not to get too detailed. I'm not gonna talk about everything, but I will do sort of like a slow walkthrough so you can see sort of what I have, and I might stop to talk about some releases if I feel that it's warranted or something I want to pick out and mention for some reason. So yeah, let's just get into it. And so for the top shelf here, we can start off with all of my American releases. Like I mentioned, I do have the dividers with the new spines that I printed out. So here we start with America. See, we got some Blu-rays, some DVDs, some custom releases. Then we got the American Black Maria box set. And yeah, I can't really mention everything, so I'll just try to go fairly slow so you can sort of make out what it is, or make freeze frames or whatever if you are interested in a particular release. And you can also comment on this video if you want to ask me about a particular release or something which you're curious about. And yeah, so basically up to here are all my American releases. Then we have one single release from Argentina. Then we move over to Australia. And I gotta say, I'm really happy with the way these dividers worked. So it was a really cheap way to sort of make dividers. And it's funny because when I printed these out, I didn't really think about the fact that this particular shade, like the shade of the paper and the color of the paper, blends really, really well with the wooden color of the shelves. That's just something that sort of happened when I've started putting these up. I'm like, okay, this blends really well. I don't know why I didn't really think about it. So yeah, a really cheap way to make dividers, and the only thing you really need is obviously a bunch of empty clamshells, which, you know, I essentially just got a box for free of videotapes, which were like later retail releases, and I'm like, okay, this is just trash, but I can actually reuse the clamshells for this purpose, so that was pretty cool. But in any case, let's just move over to the Australian releases. And, you know, starting with this really rare double tape. And after that, we got some DVD editions, some Blu-rays, more VHS copies. And you might think I have duplicates, but generally I don't have duplicates. The reason why I have more than one of these is that essentially these two are absolutely the same, but this is because this is a VHS and a Betamax. I think. No, actually, this is a bootleg, so I guess it could be bootleg shelf, but I don't know. Let's just get back to that. So yeah, the reason why I have, you know, some similar ones, they're not actually the same copy. It's usually because they're different formats, like VHS and Betamax, or there's some sort of small difference between them. Like, I generally don't buy the same identical copy for any of these. I just want one copy of each. That's like my goal. Essentially, completing this collection would mean that I would have one copy of each release ever put out of this film, which I gotta tell you, I'm not far off, to be honest. So now we have moved over from Australia to Austria. They've released not as much as I thought. I think I'm confusing it with Germany, which is below, which is whole lot of stuff, but commonly Austria and Germany tend to get a bit confusing because they have, I believe, some labels which have released editions in both countries, which makes it a bit confusing. But anyway, so these are the Austrian releases, some Heartbox DVDs, small heart boxes. Then we move over to Brazil. Here I don't have too much. I think Brazil is one of those countries where I'm missing quite a few editions, but I do have most of them, I think. So we get some DVDs, a new DVD box set, which I guess is a bit uncommon. This one might be one of those things which people haven't really seen too much of. So I realize this is the first one I'm pulling out. It's just what I thought. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff here which I could show you, but then again, I would never get through making this video. So moving over here, we have the second shelf, and this starts off with all of my Canadian releases. So here we got a bunch of these classic, really unusual cardboard boxes. Here's a Betamax copy from Astral Films for just quite a high price on eBay. And I'm so glad that I started collecting this years ago, because looking at some of these tapes now, it's just ridiculous with grading. Fucking, I hate grading. Fuck you and your grading. Yeah, I'm just really happy that I got into collecting Texas Chainsaw when I did, because it would be impossible to buy all this stuff now, to be honest. And you know, at the same time, I do feel that my obsession with Texas Chainsaw and the fact that I'm sharing a lot of this on Instagram and on Facebook and whatnot is also part of why collecting Texas Chainsaw tapes and collecting editions of Texas Chainsaw in general, just collecting DVDs. Like, when I started this out, nobody cared about keep case editions. That's trash. But I'm like, no, I'm actually going to buy everything, not just like the generally considered collectible stuff. And if you look at that now, seeing like rare editions, like even if they are not generally considered collectible, like today, you will actually, you know, sometimes pay quite a high price for something just because it's unusual, not so much that it's should be collectible. I don't know, I'm rambling on here. The point I wanted to make is that some of the stuff that's been the most difficult to find is essentially stuff like this, which is actually almost not able to make out here. This is the only release I have from the Chess Republic. Really boring release. It's a flat sort of cardboard sleeve thing, but it's stuff like this, like really, really narrow stuff from countries which don't generally have a big sort of market internationally. That's like the stuff that's been most difficult to find. But that's not where I started. I mean, I started getting like all of the collectible editions. First, I started out with DVDs and Blu-rays, like getting all of the collector's editions there. Then I got into videotapes and started getting like all of the classic collectibles, like these big sort of astral clamps and stuff, getting it both on VHS and Betamax. I think this is actually one of the few... I think I'm actually missing one. Yeah, I'm missing... What am I missing? Yeah, I'm missing this one, the American cover version from Astral. I'm missing that on VHS because I only have this, which is actually beta. But as for the French one, the French language covers, I have that both for VHS and Betamax. So I do have a couple of these things which I'm missing. I can't spend like too much money and focus on this, but I do try to buy everything that comes out that's new release, like everything that's like an anniversary. It just sets me back so much to spend money trying to grab these. But it's a really cool hobby. I really do dig it. And sorry that I'm rambling. So let's just move on. Now we've gone through the Canadian versions, the Chinese versions, Czech Republic. This moves over to Denmark. So here are all of the Danish editions. Then we have the Finnish editions. You can tell that I'm obviously going in alphabetical order here. So here's a small set of Finnish releases. Nothing too exciting. Then we move over to France, which is one of these countries which has a whole lot of releases for Texas Chainsaw actually. So first we get to all of the videotapes. And I'm pretty sure these are all of the VHS editions that are available in France. I might be missing one or two like a later sort of 90s releases, which are hard to come by. But as far as the really early ones, which are from René Chateau, the René Chateau editions, have the tiger on them. I do have all of these as far as I know. I don't have like, I know there might be Betamax or Video 2000 releases of some of these, but that's like really hard to find. I just have, this is what I have. I don't have anything else stacked away for friends. So here comes a really big Blu-ray box set, nice little centerpiece. Really does tie the shelf together, I think. Then we got some more DVDs, really recent new Blu-ray edition here, which I haven't really shown, so I can just pull this out briefly because this is the latest thing I got. Really lovely presentation, so I should probably make a video on that when I can. I don't know why I pulled this out, and I'm never gonna be able to get this back in. Oh come on. Okay, I'll just leave that to the side for now and we'll put it back later. So that's like the latest French releases. There's also like the standard versions of that. Then we move over to the German versions, which I'm pretty sure is the most prolific country when it comes to releasing this movie. I mean, look at this. This is all German releases. And also notice the amount from the same label. Check out this. This is the Turbine logo. Oh, God. As much as I love this movie, it is a nightmare trying to buy all of these because there's so many releases from Turbine. Check this out. I mean, they are everywhere. And also, they tend to release like multiple covers every time. Like, look at this over here. This is like 6 different versions of hard boxes, which are really expensive. So I got these because it's like the DVD, the Blu-ray, the DVD, the Blu-ray. It's like 3 cover versions. And, you know, I'm a completist. I gotta own 1 copy of each format for each cover. It is exhausting, but, you know, I started this. I've already come this far, so I guess I gotta keep this going. So, where was I? I guess this is the end of this shelf. There's a small couple of playing cards over here. One of them which is actually signed. It's a VHS at the end, but yeah. Maybe I'm not picking out too much to show you. I should be picking out more weird stuff, but so far it's been pretty, you know, common countries. I think we will look at some more examples when we get into the really unusual stuff. So I'm just gonna go ahead and place back that recent Blu-ray find so I don't have to do that later. And then we can actually move over to looking at the last shelf. So way down here in the corner, we have a continuation of the German releases. So this is essentially VHS tapes from Germany, and then we move over to the Greek editions. Now these are really uncommon. I don't see a lot of this. This is a Greek VHS tape. I think it is the only one they released. So quite uncommon copy, and actually in pretty good shape, aside from the fact that the plastic there is a bit worn. There's also a Greek DVD, also really, really uncommon. I don't see a lot of this. And I know generally, like, people tend to be, like, either they collect videotapes or they collect DVDs. I collect everything, and especially for Texas Chainsaw, I really want to own every copy. I don't care if it's cheap, if it's expensive. I just want a complete library for this. This is like my goal. Here are some Hong Kong editions. I always find it really hard to sort of separate Hong Kong editions from Chinese editions. I don't really get it, but yeah, there is essentially a difference in terms of the regions or whatever. Let's see what we have. Then we move over to Hungary, another really unusual copy. This is a DVD edition, which I also think is the only version available in Hungary. I don't think they ever released a VHS. Then we have Israel, also very uncommon. I have a DVD, which I think might be a bootleg. But for some of these countries, I do actually have a bootleg shelf on the other side of the room. But in some of these cases where it's a really unusual country, like Israel, where I'm not really sure, it's a bit of a gray area in terms of do they have the rights or not, I tend to include them in the main library, so to speak. But here is my Israeli VHS copy, also really uncommon. So really happy to have that, because it's a lot of this stuff that is very milestone-ish. And I gotta say that most of this, like these odd countries like Israel, Hungary, Greece, you know, the more obscure the country or the more obscure the market, that's been the releases that have been the most hard for me to find. Because, like, even though these things, like the Canadian releases, which go for a whole lot of money and are really rare, people are aware of them. Like, you can find them if you're willing to pay the right amount of money. But looking at stuff like this, like the really, you know, obscure countries, if you want to say it like that, these, you can find these at a good cost, but it's really difficult to track down, because these countries don't really have a major secondhand market that's available internationally. You really have to go onto like local eBay sites or local marketplaces, or mostly, like, the best way to do it is to have a private connection in that country, like another DVD collector or film collector who can go look for you, because these are really difficult to find, because some countries might not have the largest sort of secondhand market. Like, it might not be too common with secondhand shops or marketplaces and whatnot, and then it becomes a real nightmare trying to just track these down. But in any case, then we move over to Italian releases here. And not too many tapes. They do have a couple. So there's a couple of cardboard editions over here, which aren't too common. Then we have some DVDs. And then we have some large clamshells, which I think are more commonly. I think you can probably find these still at a pretty good deal. You know, it's some tapes that I think are still available without paying like huge amount. It feels like the American market and Canadian market are the ones which are getting really crazy about the prices, like with the whole grading bullshit. It tends to be the highest general prices there. Then we move over to Japanese releases, also quite a bit. We do have some Japanese DVDs, some really classic and cool, like, if we're going to talk about DVD editions, I do love the look of this box. It is a really classic, nicely designed collector's edition, which I really dig. But also some of these things which have been really difficult to hunt down are some of these DVD editions, which I know I'm actually missing a couple of DVDs, which is like, Japan has always been difficult to research, not only because of the language barrier, like trying to search, like it's a different language, it's not too easy to translate to try and find something. But also, Japanese does have a lot of first press editions and things which might not be generally too documented, but they are out there. Like this one was something which I think took me quite a long time to find. It has this really odd DVD case, which isn't regular keep case. And also, I think there's another one here, which I also spent quite a few years looking for. I don't know if it's this. Yeah, so this is a DVD rental copy. So it's a rental version at the top. But this is the kind of stuff that I didn't even know existed until someone shared it with me. And a lot of that stuff, which isn't generally collectible, can be, to me, very collectible, because it's just the kind of stuff that people don't know about. Like usually, like the cheapest version, like the sort of, I don't know, like a reissue, like a third reissue from the 90s or something, is the kind of stuff that you don't really see documented. And by this day and age, the DVD marketplace is becoming less and less interesting for people, which means that finding details about like old sort of reissues and second presses and whatnot can be really tough. And that's also the kind of stuff that people in general don't find 90s DVD editions have any collectible value, so they just throw it out. So that's also part of why some of these copies, which aren't generally considered collectible, can be really, really hard to come by. But in any case, so we've done all of the Japanese ones. Now we're moving over to Korea, which surprisingly I only have a single copy from. I thought I would have a DVD edition at least, but apparently not. So this is a Korean VHS, really bizarre cover, which, you know, even has a really bizarre back cover. Like nothing about this says that it's the first movie, aside from the fact, I don't even think it has the names from the first movie. All the pictures are from like the second film, and even the covers from the second film. It's like, you see the eyes up here? That's like the only thing that's from the first movie. So it's really weird. But it is actually the first movie. So it's just a really weirdo cover scene over there sometimes. Okay, you know what? I think I actually made a mistake. Because... okay. You know what? I think that these, which I've actually placed on Hong Kong, I think these are in fact Korean releases. This one is pretty curious. This is like a CD case, you know, weirdo slip case, which goes on the wrong way. So this is like a video CD, which is also quite an unusual format to get to. Okay, so yeah, these are probably from Korea. I probably don't have anything from Hong Kong. I'm well aware that Hong Kong is a part of China. But just to clarify, the reason why I made two sections is because Hong Kong is like its own region, and I am pretty sure that I have seen releases which are labeled as specifically being Hong Kong releases and not Chinese releases. Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to print out or just rearrange this, so... yeah, sorry about the confusion, but those are probably Korean, so they should be over here, but we're gonna have to fix that later. Okay, so moving on, we get to some really obscure ones. Here we have some couple of releases from Lebanon. Really surprised that I actually have two releases from this country. First, I have a really questionable VHS release. It actually says Betamax on the cover. It's really poorly copied, but it is actually a VHS copy. This is for sure a bootleg, but then again, it's such an obscure country, so I kept it here anyway. Then we have another one, which I think is actually official, or like this is actually the way they were rented out in video stores. So this just has like a sort of glued on paper cover, and this also has like one of my favorite sort of lines or sort of promotional things, which actually says "forbidden to cardiacs and pregnant women." It's so hilarious. I love it. So yeah, that's a really collectible one, and I'm gonna twist that one the wrong way out just so I have the spine level showing, because that's really have a title for the spine. Then we have Malaysia, another really uncommon country. I'm guessing we can show that. This is the only Malaysian release I have, and this is a combo between the original Texas Chainsaw and the return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, aka Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 4. So these are two movies back to back on the same tape. For some reason they combined the original and the fourth film in the franchise. Really weird. They move over to Mexico, also really uncommon editions. Mexican VHS tape with the pictures from, I think that's from this, I don't know, second or third film, I forget now, but yeah, probably second. So then we got more Mexican, also really rare, unusual. I got the same one on DVD, also from Zima Films. And oh, this is probably my rarest in this lot. This is a Mexican Betamax from VideoMax. Not in the best of shape, but this is one of those which is so uncommon. I rarely see it. I realize this is probably a cut box, because as you can see there's some mismatches between the spine and the back and the front, like the lines don't match up. So I think this actually was only available as a VHS in terms of the size of the cover, but they probably had like an insert or something and then capped the Betamax. Like, you know, sometimes it'll do cardboard boxes that have inserts to remove the size or whatever. But that's like the only copy I've ever seen. I think I've seen one more copy on Facebook, which is really pristine, but I do believe that was a VHS copy. So this is the only Betamax I've seen. Then we got Netherlands. Here I got a couple different ones. This is one of the few releases I have, which is actually Video 2000. So this is a classic cover. I have this in 3 variations, which I believe are, I know these are all the releases available. So this is the Video 2000 one, but I also have this on VHS and on Betamax. So I got all 3, the Holy Trinity. And we got another VHS edition from VML, the same company, Video Movies Lerdam. And some more videotapes, some more DVDs, and then we move over to Norwegian editions. And yeah, then we have one of these little leather face movie sound effect things here, which I think is a bit odd. But that is it for the entire new shelf, which I'm so happy about. So just give me a moment to get on my feet. And oh yeah, here's another rifle, which I forgot to mention. This is actually, I don't know what you call it. This is like a BB gun, like the air rifle thing. It looks really old. I'm guessing this might be like a, I don't know if this is 70s, really rusted, sort of really worn, rusted. And this was also something which I got for free from one of my friends. Same friend who was clearing out some stuff and got me the replica rifle. This was part of the same lot. But let's go ahead and move over to this shelf over here. So we are getting to the end of these sort of categorized or alphabetized editions. So let's just continue. And first up on this shelf, we do have Portugal. Also really obscure, uncommon country to get editions from. I'm going to just show you some of them. Here is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre director's cut, but obviously no difference to any of the other ones. I guess they just happened to release Texas Chainsaw as a censored release in Portugal, I assume, and then it's like the director's cut because it's uncut. I don't know. Some more Portuguese editions, which are really uncommon. Is this actually from Portugal? No, this is probably Polish. I think I've actually misplaced this. Do I even have a Polish section? God damn it, this was such a perfect video. Okay, I'm gonna place that just a bit out of the shelf there to remember to do something about that. Then we got Russian editions, also really uncommon. This is the only Russian edition I got, which is a DVD. I do believe this might be a bootleg. Not entirely sure. Or maybe it's official, I don't know. But it's the only one I have, I think. Then we got Serbian editions, also really uncommon, just one edition in that shelf. And then we get over to South Africa. These are also really collectible. I only have 2. These are both VHS copies. Same cover design, so not too interesting in terms of the cover, but they are really uncommon. This is just a really tough country to import stuff from. Then we get to Spanish editions. Spain has always been quite common in terms of re-releasing this movie, as you can see. So we got several different releases on DVD, got some Blu-rays, and some of these are even like really good looking collectible editions like these, which is like a digipack, which has really sort of exclusive, good looking artwork. And just generally, I do feel that Spain is doing some stuff, trying to stand out there, not just rehashing the same thing. Like here's also another edition, which looks quite unique in terms of the design. Then we get to some earlier versions. These are like the old VHS and Betamax versions, like the oldest ones. Also these really unique cover designs, which I love, which have been reused quite a bit. So I think they have the same on these ones. Then we get to some really bizarre ones. The only reason I'm bringing these ones up, not because they are super uncommon, but because they are so just bizarre. Like look at some of these covers. So this, a lot of sort of lightning bolts, bizarro font on the cover. And you can just check the next one. I think it's also really weird. Yeah, here we got a picture of the third movie. And it's like, yeah, then we're going with what I think is... I don't know if this is originally like a Spanish poster art, but just look at these. They're just doing like grabbing from all parts of the franchise, making really bizarre setups. So yeah, not really sure if those were interesting, but they do make a great example of a country that uses a whole lot of different cover arts and doesn't really just reuse the sort of theatrical poster art from that region or whatever. Then we move over to the Swedish editions, which is essentially where it started for me. Seeing as this is my native country, I started collecting this film on Swedish versions, and this is sort of how I got into collecting the videotapes because of the particular Swedish history. Like the film was banned here back in 1986, and then it was sort of, you know, outlawed or banned or couldn't be sold or whatever for quite a long time. And so yeah, that's sort of where it started. That's also part of why I was so interested in collecting these Swedish editions. But in any case, so here we have some DVD box sets, like some of these combo box sets, which aren't too interesting. And then we have more of the individual releases. So I'm pretty sure I have all of these Swedish releases available. I don't know of any ones that I'm missing. So this includes like, you know, multiple color copies of keep cases. This is like a rental, whereas, you know, the next one is like a retail. So it's like I really do try to only buy one copy. I know I've said this before, but if you see some duplicates, there usually is some really small detail that sort of shifts between them. So down here, this is probably my favorite out of all the stuff I have. This is the thing that sort of started things, or the thing where things started escalating. So this is the actually UK import. This is the square-shaped, really early pre-cert version, which came out in the UK from Ivor Film Services. This particular copy is actually a Swedish copy, which was imported and has a Swedish label added to it, which is the only real proof that this is a Swedish copy. Now, generally, people might consider this a UK copy. I don't know what I think, but I do actually even have a rental agreement from the company who sort of imported this and rented it out in Swedish stores. So I was able to acquire this just as an interesting piece of proof that this is actually one of the few surviving copies which was imported to Sweden at the time when this film was banned in the country. So these were really, really, and I mean, this is also one of the more expensive items I've picked up. I think I paid roughly 500 euro for this one back in the day. I think today you would pay more for them, but it's just a really unusual collectible, especially for the Swedish market. But even in UK, these go for a lot of money. But this whole combo case, which actually is a combo for like either VHS, or you can also use it for Super 8 reels, which makes a really unique case. And it's also really brittle, so hard to find in good condition. Then we move over to some other VHS releases. Here's another Swedish classic. This is the 1986 rental copy, which was banned and actually removed from shelves. So this was withdrawn or deleted, whatever you want to call it. And then moving over to some more generic Swedish copies, which are also going up in price recently, which I don't like, just because I don't think they're worth that kind of money. But like some of these classic retail copies, classic cover art, and then some 90s releases, sort of reissues, which also not the most interesting in terms of artwork, but I do really have a soft spot for these Swedish VHS copies, just because this is sort of where my fascination for Texas Chainsaw and videotapes started to some extent. Then we move over to Thailand editions, also really, really uncommon market for these releases. Here are some Thai VHS tape. This is one of the ones I found most recently. Really, really uncommon. And here is another one. This is probably one of the craziest covers I've ever seen for this movie. It's so stupid. It's like the glowing eyes, bizarro. I don't know what it is about Thailand that does these really, really bizarre cover art. This sort of reminds me of the South Korean edition we have over there with like the glowing eyes and the weirdo part 2. I don't know. Just look at these eyes. This is like the weirdest shit ever. So in any case, I am rambling on. Let's see what else we have. Then we got some Thai VCD editions. These are also really uncommon, like these CD type format or VCD, video CD, which you see from some countries, but it's really not a common format. Then we get to Turkey. Only have a couple of editions there, so I can show you one or two. This is a Turkish DVD, one of the few they have. And then they also have a Turkish VCD edition, which is also pretty uncommon. Then we move over to UK, which also has quite a bit of releases, as you can tell. So this is also, as far as I can tell, this is a complete set. I'm pretty sure. I was wondering, like, oh, is this dirty? But it's actually meant to be stained like that, I think. So in any case, here we got the UK editions, starting off actually kind of chronologically. I think these are like the earliest DVD versions. The white digipack, the black digipacks, some keep cases in various styles. Steel books, like the worst ever title, the 3-disc Seriously Ultimate Edition. This is like the only time Seriously Ultimate has been used to market a film, and I still think it's really funny that they printed that. It's just it's so stupid. Let's see. Then we got Blu-rays, DVD, the new Blu-ray boxer from Second Sight, really beautiful, and then the reissues, or like the standardized version with the same covers, which essentially use the same covers or paying homage to the really early ones, like this one, which is a Super 8 version. So they're using the same cover art, which hasn't really been used to release this movie in the UK since the early Super 8 or VHS copies. So that's actually really cool. Now this is part 1 of a 4-part set. So you actually have parts 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a 4-reel edition of Super 8 reels. So this is a 4-reel set of the entire film, which is quite uncommon. Now I'm gonna try to place that back in there. Yay, using my foot. And then we have one more which is not labeled, and this is actually an abridged version. So this is a shortened version of the film, which was way more common on Super 8 than getting the full 4-reel set. And here we have one more Super 8, which we might as well show. This is the Duran version, which is also really uncommon. I mean, Super 8s in general go for a lot of money these days. And here, last in the row, is also really uncommon. VHS pre-cert cardboard box, which, yeah, you can still find these. This one is, you know, a bit faded, but like I said, it's been quite a while since I picked this up. So, you know, whenever I find one that's rare and it's in decent shape, I don't tend to replace this because it's just too much money. I mean, if I find a good deal, obviously, but usually, you know, I have too many rare versions to be able to sort of nitpicking about them being like pristine. I'm just more happy about having more versions than having like mint condition copies of everything. Plus, a lot of the time you can't even find it anyway. Moving over to the last little stretch of editions here, we actually have a couple of more editions from the UK. We're not really done with UK. So here we have some more VHS copies, ranging from this one, which is the Wizard Video one, which is actually an American release, but this is the PAL version, which I believe you could only get through like a mail order offer. So this is a cut box, but this is the way they were sold. So this was actually a cut box, relabeled and transferred to PAL instead of NTSC, which would be the American standard. And then we have some more late 90s retails. Got the Shocking Truth documentary. Then we got the early pre-cert versions, which again use the red and white cover. So the reason why I have several of these is obviously because we have VHS, Betamax, Betamax again. Why do I have two made Betamax copies? Now I'm confused. Do I have two? Oh, right. This is because this is actually not the same edition. Taken out, you can notice that this is actually the uncensored versus the Certificate X. So these are actually different cuts of the film. That's why I have two versions. Wow. It's like I have so many copies of these, I tend to forget why I have two. I have to sort of study them to remember this. Then we have some more variations of that. We get this cover, which is a bit odd. This has only been used on these old VHS copies. I really like that one. Then we have another one of the skulls. Same skull is up there, same skull is over there. But here I just used the top portion. And this one also had a transit damage. But I don't really care. It still looks really cool. It looks really authentic. Then we move over to bootlegs. So now we've actually gone through all of the countries. This was A through Z, or well, A through U, because United Kingdom was actually the last country in this row of various releases. I don't know what should come after U, so I'm not really sure what country. If I'm missing anything, if you have anything in your collection that I'm not having in mind and you want to sell it, do contact me, because I am always looking to add those missing pieces to this never-ending archive of releases. So here are the bootlegs. It's quite a bit of odd stuff here. I don't know if they are generally considered collectible, but I really do like the bootlegs because they can be really, really odd and really, really fun. And so let's just go ahead and check it out. Here it's a really uncommon one, which I believe is also from Russia, as I recall. So this is the Retro Horror Remix Presents the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Complete Fan Edit box set. I don't think I've actually even watched this, but here you can see you have these various bizarro sort of odd cuts of the film or various movies all combined into one. And let's see, here is actually a custom edition, I think. So this is 1 out of 1 copy. It's similar to the UK Digipack, but it's a bit more clean, a bit different cover art. I forget now the name of the guy who did this, but it's one of those editions which I found online and was able to purchase it. So it's just done as a testing print or something, like a personal project. Some more various bizarro bootlegs. This is usually stuff I found for cheap. Oh, let's see what else we got. Oh, this is a really interesting one. This is actually a brand new release from something called Rob's Nostalgia Project. You can find this on Facebook. Just search for Rob's Nostalgia Project. This is a really interesting bootleg. This essentially has a 5K scan. Not a 4K scan, a 5K scan of a 35mm print. This is very unique in that it is presented, as I understand it, is presented as an open matte presentation, meaning that's a different cropping than what you'll get on your average Blu-ray. And it's just a really interesting presentation, and it looks actually quite professionally made, if you ask me. It even comes with a bunch of these stickers, and you know, it's got disc art and whatnot. And it has the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It also has some other scans which he made. There's one for Psycho and also one for Silence of the Lambs. It's just a really interesting one, but it's hard for me to list all the sort of specifications for this. But look it up, go to Rob's Nostalgia Project on Facebook, or Google for Rob's Nostalgia Project, and I know that he has like an official website which you can read more about. And not only does it include a 5K scan of a 35mm print, which is entirely uncut, it also features actually a presentation of the old IFS, Ivor Film Services cut, which appears on this VHS, and it also features another cut, which is the first ever UK pre-cert, which I mentioned before, which is one of my favorites. So, I mean, all of these UK releases, the early ones, tend to have some slight differences in terms of the cuts. So there are essentially a lot of different variations in the UK over the years, and now you know, Rob has essentially taken on himself to not only make a 5K scan of a 35mm print, which is quite costly and quite unique, but he has also made some transfers of these old variations. So it's really interesting to get these and be able to watch these digitally if you want to, just to sort of be able to check the differences between these various versions. So yeah, this is definitely one of the more interesting releases I've seen in recent years, and really actually quite interesting project. So I would highly advise you to look this up. Just search for Rob's Nostalgia Project and you can read more about this. And there is a website where you can read all about the process and all of the sort of history in the UK about these various versions that's included and scanned on this particular release. So definitely one for the die-hard collectors to check out. Then we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know what this is. Oh, it's a puzzle box. Okay, I think. Whatever. I can't really remember. I can't really go through all these in detail. But yeah, here are some really odd bootlegs. So this is essentially the last off the shelf. Oh, and before we go, before I try to close this up, we have these film transfers. These are Betacam master tapes, and I've shown these, so if you want to see more of them in detail, just go to YouTube, where you probably are, and search for DISCJUNKIETV and Betacam or master tapes or whatever, and I'm sure you will find them. So these were used as master tapes for one of the Laserdisc editions. I believe it's from Elite Entertainment. So these are really rare. These are essentially one copy only. These are production Betacam masters, which I was able to acquire for a whole lot of money from like the previous president of the company. He was clearing out some old stock and had these one copy only set of these master tapes. So that's really unusual items, which I'm really happy about. But yeah, I would say that is essentially it for this video. I'm just trying to realize that there's something I missed that I should talk about. Yeah, we can actually mention these real quick. This is just a little bird cage here, which I have in the window. Then we have some of these little doll parts, which I suppose are a bit too clean. Maybe I should dirty them up a bit. And not really sure, but I do, you know, recall that in the movie they have a lot of these bird cages. I want to get more bird cages in here, but I only had the one, so I decided to place this here. And we also have a really creepy sort of toy type keychain, which I found at some point, which I just think is really odd. And then obviously to the left, which I forgot to mention, we have this bear trap, which is actually a screen-used hero prop from a movie which is called The Collector, which is a more modern-day horror movie. And the reason why this is in here is because I couldn't really find a good place to display this, and it really fits the theme of having a bear trap. I just think that it fits the theme of the movie really well. And so this is all wooden. The chain doesn't belong with it. I put that there. And then these are actually foam, as you can tell. So they look sharp and they look really cool, like metal, but this is actually just foam. But that is probably it for this entire room. And I don't know, just stand here for a bit and take in the overall scope of what I've been able to do. And I gotta say that I'm really happy with the overall feel of this. So I really hope you enjoyed looking at it. If you have any thoughts about like questions or particular releases you want me to review or talk about, I've shown so much of this in detail throughout the years, but it's always nice to hear what you think about this project, because I'm really, really happy about the way this turned out. So with that said, I think there's not much else to do but to say thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this, and I'm definitely going to return to this project because this room is a never-ending process. It's one of my favorite parts of the man cave because it's just something that I've really come to explore in terms of doing bizarre, crazy stuff. Like the other rooms are much more sort of down to earth, just displaying movies, but in here I really decided to go outside the box and just do a bizarro, crazy horror theme, which is quite different to the other rooms I have in this house. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching, and as usual, hope to see you all next time.